Have you ever wondered how to bake your own bread at home? It's a question that sparks a journey into a world filled with the warm, inviting aroma of freshly baked bread right from your own kitchen. Imagine the sense of fulfillment that comes from crafting a loaf from just a few simple ingredients. It's a process that's both therapeutic and rewarding. Baking your own bread isn't just about the satisfaction of creation, it's also about control. You decide what goes into your loaf, and that means no preservatives, no unpronounceable ingredients, just wholesome goodness. You're in charge of your food, and that's a powerful thing. There's something magical about homemade bread. The transformation from raw ingredients to a golden, crusty loaf is nothing short of alchemy. And the best part? It's a magic you can master. So, if you're ready to take the leap and start baking your own bread, this video will guide you through every step of the process. Before you start, ensure you have the right ingredients and tools. The magic of bread baking boils down to 4 humble ingredients: flour, yeast, salt, and water. Flour is the backbone of your bread, providing structure. Yeast, a living organism, helps the bread rise by producing carbon dioxide. Salt adds flavor and controls yeast activity, while water hydrates the flour and activates the yeast. Quality matters, my friends. Use strong bread flour for a high rise and consider fresh yeast for a superior flavor. Unrefined sea salt can add a touch of gourmet, while filtered water ensures no unwanted tastes join the mix. Now, onto the tools. A large mixing bowl is your starting point, where ingredients come together to form a dough. A sturdy baking tray will cradle your loaf as it bakes, while a reliable oven ensures even, controlled heat. With these essentials, you're ready to start your bread baking journey. The first step in baking bread is preparing the dough. A simple statement, but one that holds the secret to the divine taste and texture of homemade bread. The process begins with the careful mixing of ingredients: flour, water, yeast, and salt. These are the 4 humble ingredients that will transform into a loaf of bread. Pour the flour into a large bowl, making a well in the center. Warm some water, not too hot, not too cold, just right, and gently pour it into the well, followed by the yeast. The warmth of the water will wake the yeast from its slumber, setting off a chemical reaction that will result in the rise of your dough. Now, add in the salt, which will enhance the flavor and help control the yeast's activity. Once the ingredients are in the bowl, the next stage is to bring them together into a cohesive mass. For this, you will need to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. Kneading the dough is both an art and a science. It's about feeling the dough under your palms, pressing and folding it until it becomes smooth and elastic. This process develops the gluten in the flour, creating a network of strands that will give your bread its structure and chewy texture. However, the magic of bread making doesn't stop there. Once kneaded, the dough needs to rest. This is the stage known as proofing or rising. Cover your dough with a damp cloth and leave it in a warm, draft-free area. This is when patience truly becomes a virtue. As the yeast ferments the sugars in the dough, it releases carbon dioxide gas, causing the dough to expand and double in size. This process is what gives bread its characteristic airy texture. Remember, bread making is not a race. It's a leisurely journey that requires time and patience, but the reward is well worth the wait. Once your dough has doubled in size, you're ready for the next step: shaping and proofing. And now that your dough has risen, it's time to shape your loaf and let it rise again. Shaping your dough is an art form in itself. It's not just about creating a pleasing aesthetic, but it's also about ensuring an even bake and a good crumb structure. Start by dusting your work surface lightly with flour, then gently deflate your dough by pressing it into a rectangle. Fold the top third of the dough down and the bottom third up, as if you're folding a letter. Rotate the dough 90 degrees and repeat this process. This technique is called letter folding, and it's a great way to create layers within your loaf. Now it's time to form your loaf. Roll your dough into a cylinder, making sure to seal the seam well. This will give your loaf its classic shape. Next, we move on to proofing. This is a crucial step in bread making. Proofing, or the second rise, is when the dough is allowed to rest and rise again after it has been shaped. This helps to develop the bread's flavor and texture. It's not about rushing, but about patience and precision. Place your shaped loaf seam side down into a lightly greased loaf pan or onto a baking sheet if you're making a free-form loaf. Cover it gently with a damp cloth and let it rest in a warm, draft-free spot. Your loaf should double in size. This could take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours depending on the temperature of your kitchen. Don't be tempted to rush this process. A slow, steady rise results in a more flavorful bread with a light, airy texture. Remember, a well-proofed loaf will spring back slowly when poked, while an underproofed one will spring back quickly. If your dough springs back immediately, let it rest a bit longer. After your loaf has risen properly, it's finally time to bake your bread. The anticipation is building, isn't it? But don't worry, the wait will be worth it. The aroma of freshly baked bread is just around the corner. The moment of truth has arrived, baking your bread. This is the stage where all your hard work comes to fruition. The oven is your stage and the temperature is your spotlight. You'll want to preheat your oven to about 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius if you're across the pond. This high heat kickstarts the loaf's final rise, giving it a lovely, rounded shape. Now, timing is everything in this act. For a standard loaf, around 30 minutes is often the sweet spot, but remember, every oven is a bit different. So this is more of a guideline than a hard and fast rule. Keep an eye on your loaf as it bakes. You're looking for a deep, golden brown crust. If you notice your bread browning too quickly, simply tent a piece of aluminum foil over the top to prevent it from getting too dark. But how do you know when your loaf is done, you ask? There's a simple old baker's trick for that. Simply take your loaf out of the oven, flip it upside down and give it a tap on the bottom. If it sounds hollow, your bread is done. If not, back in the oven it goes. Once your bread is baked to perfection, resist the temptation to slice into it right away. I know it's hard. The smell of freshly baked bread is almost impossible to resist, but trust me, letting your bread cool before slicing is key. It allows the steam inside the loaf to complete its magic, making your bread's texture perfect. Allow your loaf to cool on a wire rack for at least an hour. This will ensure that the crust stays crispy and the inside stays fluffy. Patience is a virtue, especially when it comes to bread baking. Congratulations, you have baked your first loaf of bread. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. And remember, the best thing about baking bread is that even if it's not perfect the first time, practice makes perfect. So don't be disheartened. Keep baking, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep enjoying the process. Let's take a moment to recap the steps and share some tips for successful bread baking. We've traversed the journey from understanding the magic of homemade bread to baking and cooling your very own loaf. Starting with the essentials, we've seen how quality ingredients are the backbone of good bread. The perfect dough, a blend of flour, yeast, water, salt, and a bit of patience sets the stage. Shaping and proofing your loaf, it's all about technique and time, allowing the yeast to work its magic. And then the finale, baking and cooling your bread, turning that dough into a golden, crusty loaf. But what if things don't go as planned? If your dough isn't rising, check the freshness of your yeast or the warmth of your environment. Bread too dense? Perhaps you've added too much flour or not allowed enough time for proofing. Remember, practice makes perfect. Don't get discouraged if your first few loaves aren't perfect. Keep trying and soon you'll be a bread baking pro. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, share and subscribe to this channel.